Cherie Hansen here. I'm reading to you from my blog from November 26th called Going Under the Story. Pema Chandra instructs those who attend her workshops the vital skill of going under the story that is presenting at the current time. In her own inimitable way, she chuckles as she reminds her students that anything they are feeling, anything they are doing will grow. If a person is practicing a skill, it will become ingrained and more powerful. 6 weeks ago, I felt as if it was time to address some of the issues that I have been pushing down in an exhausting attempt to ignore them. I began therapy again. 6 weeks ago, for me, going to therapy has a deep taint. I see it as a stain. To admit that I can't do it alone is a sign of weakness, and like some classical mythic being, I will have the vulture circling overhead. It is a staggering weakness to admit my weakness. It is an invitation to shame to admit my shame. It is a uniform of the losing team to admit that I have been playing injured. So now I am walking through the story with the guidance of a skilled therapist. I set myself the task of not being afraid of being fearful. And it has been difficult. For many years I have not cried except for others. A picture of children massacred in Syria will elicit the bleeding grief from my eyes. A television show about those who die alone will immediately trigger a flow of sadness. But now is the time to go into my own story and also to go under it. Once before in my life, I connected to the brutality of my own past. I attended a group session held in Telkwa, BC by a section of Catholic nuns who named their methodology Personal Human Relationship Study. We formed a circle and slowly built trusts. Exercises helped us to open up the armor that each of us wore on a daily basis. And as others shared with brave openness, the epiphany struck me. I saw in my mind a picture of an 18-month-old child. I was 18 months old when my mentally ill father returned from France with his PTSD, and he became a dark, explosive, and dangerous presence in my life from then on. He went to a psychiatrist, and a lot of good that did. Mere seconds after that image appeared in my mind, the words fell out of my mouth. I was so tiny. I didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't my fault. I drove an hour home on a northern isolated highway, stripped of the not knowing. When I arrived home, I immediately called my mother and I asked her, was I abused? Did my father abuse me? She saw the world through her own fractured filter. As a person with borderline personality disorder, she was deeply invested in being the victim. There was no room in the nuclear family for another one. She held the throne. She told me a story. I didn't know, she said. I came home and he told me you had walked into a door, she said. You climbed the car and fell off onto your face, is what your father told me, she said. I saw him when you were 12 come up behind you when you were doing the dishes and grab your breasts. But that was just playful, she said. After that, I slid down the wall holding onto the phone, and I began to sob. I can't remember the rest of her words. I was not yet 40 years old, but never once had I connected with a compassionate love with the toddler who was beaten and lay alone in a bed with her broken bones untended. How could I deny her empathy and connection? Because I was taught to. Because none of us knew anything. The will to survive comes from bonding with the caregivers, numbing out, making myself wrong, and disassociation worked. But now the story I live is simply not rich enough in texture and depth to explain the deep well of sadness that I carry with me from the time I wake up until I fall asleep. With a loving guide by my side, my intention is to go under the story of my daily narrative and connect to the reality of how I truly experience life. And as I drove my car, I listened. As I drive my car, I listen. I have Pema Chandra's lessons to listen to. I know now there is a bigger truth to explore. Thank you. I hope that others benefit from the exploration that I'm making. That is my deepest, deepest hope. Thank you.